Also, I'm seeing children in motherhood leaving the workforce. In parenting, there are experiences that one may have that, you know, if you did PTA kind of work, organizing people, or any other kinds of volunteer work or committee work and those kinds of things, especially if you ever chaired a committee, those kinds of things are things you'll be doing in a library setting, and you can spin those as well. I just want to give you the general sense of really accentuating and believing in yourself, that you can really highlight those positive reasons for swerves or gaps, whatever they may be. That kind of intro for promoting your strengths is really to get us in the mood for the work that we're about to do. What we're going to do next is start to analyze job descriptions. I have this quote from Job Descriptions by Travis Bradberry, who's the author of Emotional Intelligence. He says to get to know the job intimately that you're applying for. Don't just read the job description, study it, and picture yourself performing every task required of you. And the exercise and materials that I'm offering to you today will give you a framework for doing that. I'm going to actually escape from my presentation for a moment and go into the folder that I shared with you. If you don't already have this folder open, it's called Spin It to Win It Downloads. In this folder, I've got this job description breakdown and resume / cover letter content template. What you can do is make a copy of it that you can work in. So I've made a copy of this. It's a copy. I'm going to rename it S. Kealey, job description breakdown, resume, blah, blah, blah. So that's the one that I would work in. So go ahead and make a copy of this job description breakdown and resume cover letter content template. And then once you've done that and opened it up, you can see what I've done is I've taken one of the many job descriptions. I have this other folder of sample job descriptions. So I tried to get a variety of different kinds of jobs in here. So I've got an archives assistant, which is a part-time contract position that might be appropriate for an LIS student who needs to gain experience before going for that first full-fledged librarian job. This one's an assistant librarian at SUNY Buffalo. It's also entry-level MLIS or doctorate in related field. It's an academic, data viz, a faculty reference librarian, two public library positions, and a university archivist position that requires 3 to 5 years of experience, perhaps more. So a variety of different kinds of jobs. And so what I've done here is this job is the e-resources example. Here, let me move this up so you can for sure see it. So what I've done here is I'm going to open the link to the job itself online so you can see what I did, which is basically that I went through the responsibilities and qualifications and put each individual one into here. So I've got a responsibilities heading, and then I've got the qualifications heading. And then what you can do is in column B, actually, and I say what to do in my presentation. So I'd like to give you about 15 minutes to choose one of those sample job descriptions from the Spin It to Win It Downloads folder, or to find one on Indeed or Chronicle Vitae, or maybe you have one in your back pocket that you're already working on, and use the template to match your skills and experiences to each requirement. And really just focus on column B for now. And then what I thought we could do is, as questions come up, I will address them in the chat. As you're working, I'm actually going to pull up a sample resume and start filling in some of those things to show you what I mean. So I've got this pretend resume for a fictitious librarian, and I'm going to start filling in some of those things while we work. I've put a timer on to keep us on track. I just got a question in the chat from Abigail. So yes, what we're doing is I'm working from a fictitious resume, but you could be typing in your own experience under evidence of qualification. This is really an exercise for you. You can choose any of these jobs and start copying and pasting the responsibilities into column A. So here's the blank template where you can put yours in, or you could use one of these if this is a job that you'd be interested in. I did one for archives assistant as well. For the other jobs that are there, you could use this blank one. And really, this is an exercise and to show you this framework. So I hope that answers your question, Abigail, and any other people who had that question. Also, let me reiterate that once you get to the Spin It to Win It downloads folder, you won't be editing the template or the one that says S. Kealey on it. You'll be editing, you right click on the one that says job description, breakdown, and resume, cover letter content template, make a copy of it, and then rename it for yourself. And that can be yours forever, that you can use for this process for any future job search that you do. This is my gift to you, one of my gifts to you. Oh, good. I'm getting some thank yous. So I'm glad to get some feedback that you find this useful. So I was thinking we might take 15 minutes. If we were in a classroom together, physically all together, I would give you like half an hour to do this. And I was thinking, oh, maybe 15 minutes in a webinar situation. But I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. I'm curious to know who is feeling antsy and wants to move on to the next thing and who wants more time with this. You can let me know in the chat. All right, great. Okay, wonderful. You're all feeling the same way that I do, or at least everyone who's responded. So thank you so much. And the next thing, let me get back to the presentation. Next, we're going to talk about tailoring your resume. The sheet that I've given you actually helps you to do that. So not only does the job description help you decide what to prioritize, if you'll notice with the example that I used here, I have this pretend librarian or recent library grad who has some library experience in a non-librarian role. And what I was doing is seeing where things match up and where there are gaps. So I found 2 bullets of these first few that pretty well match what's being asked for, or at least address it. And then one that doesn't quite address it, at least not in the language that the job description is asking for. Something to note about job descriptions is that they are not copyrighted things that you need to cite or anything like that. In fact, it's really best to use the language of the job description. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take, don't worry, I won't do 10 minutes. Let's take another few minutes, maybe 3 to 5. And what we'll do is practice adding language from the job description to your resume. Or if you don't have your resume with you now, I didn't expect that people necessarily would. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rework the content in column B so that it mirrors the content in column A, so that I can paste that back into the resume at a later date. And then where I highlighted in yellow, that's a gap between the job description and my sample resume. Is it simply an oversight or something that you didn't think to specify that you have done, or is it an actual gap in experience? And how might you address that gap in experience if there is a gap in experience? I will demonstrate what I mean. Here I've got the pretend resume for Electra Librarian, the electronic resources person, and the electronic resources job. So this first bullet provides principal oversight of subscriptions. And then this is worked with, for library online databases and journals. And this is worked with technical services managers and resource selectors to establish licensing agreements, subscriptions, and password control. So what was in Electra's resume actually has a little bit more detail and may encompass some other things that are in here. But this phrase provides principal oversight. Ooh, that's a powerful phrase that you may want to incorporate into the job description. I am seeing some questions. One person asked, should you address each item in a job description? And the answer is yes, absolutely. If it's not appropriate to address each item in your resume, then there's an opportunity to address it in your cover letter. So notice that column D in this template is addressed in resume or cover letter. And so for this first one, I'm going to say resume, and you could also address it in both if there's something that you really want to expound upon or flesh out, like if there's a bullet in your resume that has a story behind it. So say you have a nice anecdote about how you provided principal oversight for something, or a nice anecdote. You could write up your anecdote here, and that's for possible inclusion in your cover letter if it illustrates something important in your application. We're kind of bleeding over into the cover letter part of things, but it is kind of a holistic experience and process, so I think that's okay. Next, I was always told that job description language should be in your cover letter, but would you recommend adjusting your resume as well? Yes, 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 yes. Tailor your resume and cover letter to every job you apply for. There will be slight differences in the way that different employers describe things, and you want to use their language so that when they are going through the possibly hundreds of applications, that the fact that you are qualified jumps out immediately. Don't make them do that work of interpreting what you've written. I've served on enough search committees to know that also there's some variation in the way that librarians who serve on search committees approach that work. And so some people are really more into the cover letter and they kind of only glance at the resume, and other people really focus on the resume and skim the cover letter, but they're not as focused on it. And so you want to make sure that between the two of them, you're hitting everything that's needed. And for those really essential things, I would put them in both places. Somebody else said, I was taught to avoid parroting the job description at all. How does one achieve a balance in integrating language? So I would say, like this phrase of principal oversight, maybe if you don't want to use the exact phrase, you would say, oversaw licensing agreements, subscriptions, that kind of thing. Those are some ways to use similar language or a different form of the same word, or sometimes a synonym. But as Carlene says, she says, I was told HR looks for those buzzwords, and that is true. And, at some libraries, your resumes may be screened by HR before they may, often HR will do a screen for those necessary requirements, such as a degree, but it's possible that the search committee themselves is also doing that initial screen. So it really depends on the organization and how they do things. But certainly words that are used in the job description can only help you in your application materials, especially if it's clear that what the content of your resume already would say that. Just changing to their wording just makes it much easier for them to make that connection. It's really about making it easier for the search committee to not say no to you, because with hundreds of applications for jobs, people are it's so much reading. They are really looking for excuses to put you in the no, or maybe even the maybe pile. So don't give them an excuse to do that. Use cognitive overhead. Yes, that is so true. So definitely don't give people on search committees reasons to put you in the no or maybe pile.